left together. The barrier ranges is not an effective place to work at the best of times. But now it's okay. But they went to Melbourne, they registered the Broken Hill Proprietary Company Limited as a mining company. What they actually mined there turned out to be the richest silver mine in the world. Compensation department and a transition team from human relations, helping people in the transit between closure of steel making. This is basically medical centre, built in 1939. Staffed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week by nursing and ambulance people, with a doctor and attendants Monday and Friday during daylight working hours. We do have 27 heritage listed sites here in Newcastle. Obviously the administration building is one of them. All off to the left here is the Master Mechanic's office, or the night mechanic as you would know pretty commonly. He was the man responsible for maintenance on the back shifts, and also he was the Master Apprentices. Another heritage listed building is this DC substation, or direct current substation here, built in 1919. BHP have virtually always supplied their own power, electricity from the works here across to their houses. So we're actually in existence before NESCA supplying domestic properties in Newcastle. Now, talking about power, you may well have read back in April we had a fairly major explosion here. Nearly prematurely shut down Newcastle Speedway. All these chimneys off to the front left-hand side of the bus, this is the power department, and that explosion actually occurred over in the small building to the left-hand side here. Right in the middle, there was a stump of the chimney where there once was another one the same height as those four that were standing there. We're very, very fortunate. It happened about 10 o'clock at night. There wasn't too many people around, nobody was hurt. Although one of the cars in this car park off to the right here was flattened by a few of the things that you're seeing. But it's a lot easier to follow the flow from the walls up here and go backwards. It just keeps it in sequence and makes it a little bit easier to keep track of. So we have 6 walls up here. Some of these are heritage listed, having been built by David Baker in the 1911, 1913, 1915 period. And again, the water here is extremely deep. It's about 12 metres right at the wall area itself. Our system is that through Port Kembla and here we get our raw materials, iron ore, from Western Australia. Honeycomb is still producing, but the iron from that goes to South Australia, to the plant at Whyalla, Fair Works over there, which is 3 times larger than Newcastle. So in world terms, Newcastle is a small steelworks. Simply lower the beams over the deck of the ship. You can see the cables coming down. There's a bucket grab attached to those cables. They pick up 25 tonnes of iron ore at a time. We generally use both of the unloaders, so we're unloading about 50 tonnes a minute. And it takes us about 3 to 4 days to unload these ships. They're fairly large ships. Now if you follow the ore unloaders back to the left, you'll see a structure of pipes, stairs, with a fairly bright white line. There's iron ore, coke and limestone. The iron ore is the material that we're going to extract the iron from. The coke is the heating medium, and the limestone is to pick up the impurities and the burnt coke. And we simply drop them into the top of this tube, and they're all held in suspension by air. This is what we call the blast furnace. We blast air through the bottom. It spills out the fire, which is burning the coke, and it gets it up to about 2,000 degrees in various parts. Being made, it's pretty much the same as that. You'll notice a skip car coming down now, and another one going up. This is how we actually fill the blast furnace. lined with refractory bricks that we preheat before we put the metal in. It's just that the shape keeps the heat in there. That's why we can keep it so long. I mentioned the slag from that number 3 furnace goes to the concrete industry. Oil slag cups. You see a fairly large yellow machine right up the far end. There's another one right up just here behind the pipe. These are called press carriers. They actually carry one of these pots that are in front here, a 50-ton slag pot. We tip it off the system, take it up there, let it air cool, then we move it over to the western area of the plant where we crush it down to the road base. This is where we convert iron into steel. I'll go through the system when we get up and in there.
You know all this before?
Living.
Living all. where'd you live?
You can see the steel pouring out of that hole at the bottom.
You see it come down. Gee, it was hot. You could feel that heat.
And you can see the temperature probe is now gone. It was already registered what we need to know. Most of the sparks there are again carbon.
Now, Jim, they'll when that's empty, they'll charge that furnace again?
Yeah. It would sort of get over 3,000 and then out of control. That's why we always sort of charge.
The smoke is so white.
It's on the other end now. It used to be there.
Carrying the offcuts of billets that you see down there. This is a major project they've been involved in the last 3 months anyway. We've had a girl, Julie Squires, a sculptor, here, and she's virtually making an outline of the steelworks as she sees it from outside, with just a silhouette that blazed down. Heritage listed item is this sandstone block building here. It's certainly not for the grace and beauty of that. But the blocks themselves are convict hewn Piedmont sandstone. In 1916, BHP bought a house called Buckham, spent their life in Stenigan. 1916, BHP bought the place. We built 5 cottages and now we reclaim the block. Diesel we had that replaced the steam trains running around the site. The small carriage this side of it is a 12-ton John Darling coal skip. That's how all coal in New South Wales used to be moved. The brown jobs on wheels there, one with the chimney, the others. 2 loads of these mowers. Then we take them out and heat them up to the blue mills. That's all been replaced by that continuous caster. The building area on the right hand side, this is the Port Waratah coal loader. That and Purigang are owned by Rio Tinto, but nothing to do with BHP. You can see the water sprinkler system if it gets over about 5 kilometres an hour. Whyalla, where we've just installed a 5-strand built. This one is a cheaper pipe. And that's what we need to compete these days against electric arc furnaces, especially over in Asia. The first one holds 70,000 cubic metres of blast furnace gas. The smaller one in the distance holds 50,000 cubic metres of coke ovens gas. This is gas we generate ourselves off the process. That's our heating fuel. Most of the reheat furnaces, like the one you just saw at the Blue Mill, we actually go through both of those cylinders every hour. Beneath the cloud, they're called the batteries. In the batteries we have 78 ovens. Each oven holds 30 tonnes of crushed coal. Coal itself is a fairly dirty fuel, and it doesn't burn hot enough for what we need in the blast furnace. So what we do is we clean it up by putting it into the batteries, roasting it for 17 hours at about 1,000 degrees. That drives off all the volatiles, the coal tars, pitches, gas, water, lighter solvents like benzol, toluol, xylene. If you can see the power underneath here, the ovens themselves don't have any sidewalls. We sort of put them into the batteries provide the sidewalls, and that's the heating element. Fill them with the 30 tonne of coal, and as I said, roast them. And then when they've been roasted and all the non-wanted product taken off, we simply push the oven, and just under the quenching tower there you can see what with the air, it immediately ignites. So we need to put the fire out before it burns away to ash and there's no value to us. So in the quenching tower we drop 11 tonnes of fresh water onto the material, extinguish the fire, and that goes off. That's the 2-tonne cloud of steam that goes out the top. Now we produce 840,000 tonnes of coke here a year, and that's is not enough for what we use a year. We used to import another 60,000 tonnes up from the light solvents we sell to the paint and the plastic industry. The tars and pitches we sell to copper. That's copper, it's a chemical company, not the ones that give the parking plant. The pile of white material here is lime. The next pile is actually dolomite. They're starting to dwindle these down a little bit too, they're getting fairly close to the closure. Now, the road we're turning into now is called Iron Ore Road, and it's significant in the fact that after September this will be the eastern boundary of BHP. Everything to the right of this road will be closed, and the majority of places on the left will stay open. The first plant here on the left is BHP wire products, was known as AWI, before that Rylands. They make steel fence posts for farmers and that. Barbed wire, plain wire, very off to the right hand. This is iron ore. This is delivered here by conveyor from the wharves, where we then blend it and send it back to the blast furnace to extract the iron. But as I said earlier, we don't waste anything here at BHP. Even the dust from these piles we use because they're actually still rich in iron. The buildings up to the right over here, this is a SINTER plant. The SINTER is basically roasting dust and fusing it together so that we can form lump. Once we've got it in lump,
Where's your cup?
and we can't put it in the dust, simply choke up the airways. The building here on the left-hand side, this is a tonnage oxygen plant. It's the largest oxygen producer in northern New South Wales, but BHP is the largest user of oxygen. We're back to the south arm of the Hunter River, across there on the right, that's called 350 Kurragane, stackers and reclaimers. The propeller on the stick is Energies Australia's green energy producer, the wind turbine. But that's apparently a failure. There's not enough wind to come through here to warrant a farm of them. Coming up on the left-hand side, the blue building is our rod mill. All these coils of material are finished product, finished rods. Rod is simply round section steel between 4mm and 19mm. Their major customers are Wireworks. They have the capacity to roll 700,000 tonnes a year. For the last few years, they've been running at about 300,000 tonnes. This is mainly because there's a glut of steel in the world, and we can't compete financially against electric arc furnaces and whatever. Sort of things like wire, the offcuts from billets, the joiner blooms, bits and pieces of French paste, the shavings from the machine shop. Even these lumps, that look like lumps of dirt here, they are actually scrapings from our steel loaders. But because they're rich in steel, we can sort of melt them down and extract the steel. You see down there in the distance past that magnetic crane there, those joiner blooms that you saw at the caster, they're just down there. They'll chop those generally in half so that they sort of melt easier. They've got a couple of specially designed trucks. They carry 70 tonnes. They bring them over here and there's a scoop on the back of them. They just fill the scoop up with the scrap material. Weigh it, make sure it's right. But it doesn't matter what grade of material it is, because when you put it into the VOS system, the oxygen burns out any special additives in any grade of steel. The tonnage oxygen tank goes out of production here at Christmas time this year. The rod mill will stay on. We actually hold the port record here for inward and outward shipping with the Iron Pacific. It arrived for us with 110,000 tonnes of iron ore, went over to Kooragang and picked up 176,000 tonnes of coal. That just sounds like a figure that rolls off the tongue. Somebody actually sat down and worked out what they would look like outside the ship. You covered the Melbourne cricket ground all the way around to the outside boundary fence, up to the height of the Aussie World Gold Coast. That's 176,000 tonnes. This little creek on the right-hand side of the bump here, one stage was the southern bank of the Hunter River, and all the land that the tonnage oxygen plant, the rod mill and the bar mill are built on is a low-lying mud-flat island called Spit Island. This used to be called Flats Channel. But then the 1955 flood wiped out Maitland, had a marked effect on the steelworks. They decided as flood mitigation works to raise Spit Island, straighten out the Hunter River to sort of let the water run past. And this is now just sort of an overflow of the drainage canal. Sort of salt water is tied in. But we haven't had the effects ever since. It's sort of obviously worked.
Did John say why they don't?
Let me roll straight off coil products. Chances are it's spring steel and it's coil. They supply, basically they start at about 13mm and go up to about 15mm. front of the bus there. That's actually the other side of Turl Street, which is the street running out of Nelson Bay. That's the start of the Steel River project. Runs from there back to nearly Sandgate Cemetery. The little plant itself is an EMD plant operated by Delta. It was built by BHP and sold to Delta. EMD is electrolytic manganese dioxide, the stuff they make long life batteries from. Off to the left of the stream coming out of the top, that's our rotary lime field. It's where we treat lime and dolomite before we use it in the blast furnace. Often refine it into things like creosote and preservatives that go into treated pine. Off on the right here, this is big flat sphere in a coil. The tube made is here simply split the coil into the width that they require, internally, externally. When they chop it in the length that they want, they can either paint it, galvanise it, or plastic coat it. Mentioned scalp, there's scalp actually on the ground. Ribbons of steel? Scratching their head. A small pond off to the left here is a simple surface water collection point. Been adopted by a family of ducks and a couple of behind the Moreton Bay fig trees here on the left. Cottage, this was Bill Pratt's cottage. Bill Pratt was the man who was responsible for us going into steelmaking. Green building on the right, this was the apprentice training area. We took our first apprentice on in 1915, and on average we've trained about 120 apprentices a year, although we haven't taken any on for the last 3 years. The next building over on the right, the blue building is a lag and repair shop. This is where we repair rolling stock. This little grey building here on the left. So virtually everything you're looking at in front of us now won't be here this time next year.
Jim, when do you shut up shop?
30th of September. Lines for the coke ovens. We're now starting to dwindle them down so to coincide with the shutting of the coke ovens. The derelict building here in front of us to the left, this was the scalp mill. Hasn't been used since 1989. They kept it on in case they were going to continue with producing something in Newcastle. Now there's decisions been made that's starting to get it ready for demolition. Off to the right over here, in the far distance, the brown brick building, that's our Information Technology Centre. That's a computer centre. It's one of the larger people employing departments we have. This side of it, with the pipes coming out of the roof, is our laboratories. And the very large tin shed over there, that's our roll shop. The roll shop's actually going to stay. It's a machine shop set up to machine rolls and they'll be used to sort of fashion stone into shape. Another look at the admin building. As I said, that's heritage. That will certainly stay after we go out of steel making. On the left here, this is the Port Kimberley controlled operation. It's called the strapping line. They don't make a sort of steel strapping about an inch wide.
Yeah, sit down, have a cup of coffee, all right? The last week's just come back, so they're in. All right.
Very interesting episode. And went to the tours thing.
16, yeah. Well, no, there's a couple of papers. That's right. That's right. They're all gone. So tell me.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yes, there's more than enough. I think we'll put the two out.
What's that one up there?
That was very good. Only one thing.
So that's tube, isn't it? Did you Not bad with the camera. Is that Chris still working?
Yeah, man.
Is that his name?
slew bearing stuffed up last week, so it's not going to change the slew bearing with only a couple of weeks to go. So it takes about 5 weeks to change. Sticking out, that's the stackers, that's how we stack the ore. These heaps here. They must push out the other side, I'd say. Ribbons of steel up there, did you? No. What's left there now? If they let you have a sticky thing around.
So what's that big brick looking thing there? Is that a coke oven? Just that.
Which one? Quenching tower.
Exactly where that 20 speed is.
Yeah, that's the quenching tower. That's where all the white smoke comes out of when they dump the
All right.
red hot coke with water.
Right.
Stop it from burning away to nothing. Hopefully they don't have to regenerate, hopefully they just flatten it all and put a coat of tar over the top and turn it into a container terminal. A bit of luck. Old coke ovens used to do.
It's 23 after 11 g'day, it's 10 fell away, sun is shining down, we're enjoying this weather, and 22 degrees, it is nice stuff, it's a swell day, tomorrow's looking pretty good too. Got a classic UFM double on its way in English.
He's been up around his lane.
He went on a solo venture as well, and
There's a big building right there, remember that?
23 after 11, footy, I guess I can. The football is all the...
You're thinking of the scalp mill.
Yeah, the next one over.
The 16 home games are going to be playing. They're up in development right now. Give me a race pass 4951.
So that machine.
home.